Just squeeze it and it comes off. Is it not on there? Oh, okay, good. We don't need it anyway then.
So you have 3 sets of words. See what Tricia will
That's mine, that's yours, that's yours. And I have an extra over here on the thing. She's got her own, I don't know. If she needs it, I have it right there on the chair.
Okay, because I expect she'll need it.
Now listen, kids. Okay. Step back.
But when do we start?
That's great. I had it 2 things higher. Oh, man. Okay, good. Because I haven't lost my voice.
Well, using that key, how low does it go?
That's about slow. You guys might want to get the mics, the cordless mics over there. Oh, you think? Oh, they're using them. Well, I shouldn't have one if you don't. Or I shouldn't sing directly into it. That, I guess.
I don't think any of us need one. You may need one.
I wouldn't even be standing here. It's the live stream. It doesn't pick up. Yes, the live stream. It doesn't pick up. That's why I stand over here like the kids in the line.
Is that work?
We got this mic right here for the live stream, Linda.
Okay, is everybody in that's coming in? I don't see all the speakers. Yes, I do. 1, 2, 3, 4.
How soon before we sing it do we know? Is it
I
going to
think
be a
the
while?
whole program is this song. So, pretty soon.
How soon?
Do you need your own? I have an extra set of.
At what point do we start singing right away? It'll be a while before we sing. It'll be a couple minutes.
Okay.
Bill's gonna talk.
Are we ready?
Yes, we are.
I guess we should have practiced.
Turn your mic off, please. Thank you.
Doot, doot, doot. I'm going to heckle you all the way through it.
No, I'll turn you off. Okay, we would like to welcome everyone to our celebration of 40 years of ministry. And I apologize, I'm going to read this, but they made me read this so that I wouldn't get off track. But anyway, first of all, we'd like to thank Bishop Hazelwood for coming to our celebration. And I also, this isn't on the script, but I know how instrumental you were in making an arrangement where Carolyn could come and be the pastor of this church, which I think violated a number of long-term policies with the Synod, and we would just like to thank you again for doing that because, as you can see, it's really been very helpful for our church.
And I'm all in the challenge.
Very
That's
good.
what I do as a pastor.
We could use you here.
But in the state of Maine,
All over, yeah. So we also want to thank Pastor Carolyn and the church secretary, Debbie Chapin. They spent many hours putting this presentation together, researching it, and putting it onto slides and so on. We also need to remember and give thanks for the people at Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Augusta. Their pastor, Reverend Bruce Meyer, for his vision and the council's vision for this church, which is called Water of Life, because it never would have happened without all their generous support. This all came about when some Lutheran folks in the greater Newcastle, Damariscotta, and Boothbay area were looking for a Lutheran worship experience here in the Mid-Coast. They began their search by going to Prince of Peace in Augusta. They went first for worship, and then they went to the council meetings to express their desires for a church of their own. Today we have with us 2 people who have agreed to say a few words about their experiences at the beginning. So first I'd just like to ask, does anybody know who are our longest running members at Water of Life? Gwen? One's correct.
How about Jim Poole?
Well, Dorothy is not with us today, so. Jim Poole is the other one. Yes. So while they're coming forward, there's another piece of trivia that I'm supposed to read to see. Who do you think are the longest running summer folks who have been with us for the whole life of the church? Everybody knows that. Okay, thank you. So let's hear from Gwen and Jim. Who's going to speak first? Gwen?
Gwen and then Jim.
Okay.
What a thrill to have her with us today. Would you like me to hold the mic for you? Because we wanted to go over the Lion Street. Okay, yeah. I guess it is an honor to be the oldest one. For what reason? I don't really know. However, I just thank God that I'm still here and able to come to church. This is the first time in a couple years now that I have been able, and with a lot of help in the wheelchair and a few other things, I'm here today and I enjoy it. I can recall when we started this church, and we've had several pastors, and the one that stands out in my mind as interesting. We interviewed him in the community basement room of the Bath Savings Bank. And he was very adamant that we should have a building. And we said, well, we didn't have the assets to do a building. Well, that was his goal. Fortunately, he did it. And so we came here in this building. And as you know, it was just a dining room. And I had been to a party, and I met a fellow, and he says, oh, I understand that you have bought the former restaurant and you're going to turn it into a church. And I said, that's correct, we're working on it. He says, well, how are you doing that? I said, well, we're a little cramped for space because we don't have only one large room. And when you're trying to segregate the ages of people with an adult group and a children's group and the preschoolers, what do you do with them? And I says, well, I have the preschoolers. But I said, you know, we're in a room off of the kitchen. I don't quite understand. It's got this funny side on the walls. It's not paneling and all. And he started laughing. And I said, well, what's the matter with the room? And he said, well, I usually stop on the way home from church and or home from work, and I have a beer there in that building when it was a restaurant. And that funny walls that you see is because that was the beer cooler. So I taught about 4 preschoolers in the beer garden. And it's been fun ever since, and it's really great to get back and see you. And I know some of your names are they're there, but they're too far back right now to remember. But I do appreciate, and Carolyn has been terrific in calling on me over at Cove's Edge. And it's great. I will have to say, the staff is tremendous over there. And as you all know, when you get a little older, you have some crotchety days, whether they call them bad hair days or what, I don't know. But I have never, in the time I have spent there, and I've been off and on most of this year at Cove's Edge, I have never heard a girl, one of the staff, complain or be grouchy to a patient there or to a resident. They are very gracious. They smile. They leave the room. If you need anything, ring your bell. Whether it's in the middle of the night and you have to go to the bathroom or what, they're right there to take care of you. I really enjoy it. And Carolyn has been calling on me about every week to bring me news of what's going on, and I appreciate that.
Gwen, you weren't you one of the people that went up to Prince of Peace?
Yes, Wendy Poole and I went back and forth to Prince of Peace because that's where that was our founding for our starting. And we went back and forth several times to go to the council meeting. And we have met various places. The first time, I think I remember it was in a building in back of the hospital. That building has since come down and they've remodeled, put other things there. We also met at the Masonic Hall. We met at the, another place we met too was at the Veterans Building beside the Masonic Hall. So we have moved around quite a bit, but at least we're lasting. We got a good solid ground here.
Thank you, Gwen.
Come on, old timer, you can do it.
I'm approaching this from a different angle. It's my own when I was coming to church. So I guess I was second or something along the way, but it's more my own life. So my life as an adult starts when I was in college at the University of Vermont. My parents were going through a divorce. I could see how difficult it was for my mother. For me, I stopped studying. For me, I stopped studying. When you go to college, usually one of the rules is you have to study. And I was at the point where I didn't want to study. I flunked out. I could get back in the school if I transferred from civil engineering to agriculture. Apparently, agriculture was a little easier. The change of my life came with a chance for a blind date. I had a chance for a blind date, the junior class show at Skidmore College. I was at the University of Vermont at that time. That was going to be in Saratoga Springs, New York. Would we get along or not? The date's name was Wendy. Our meeting was fun. There were things to do, and it was a Friday night. Yeah, that's good. I could get back in school if I transferred from civil engineering to agriculture. The change of my life came with a chance for a blind date. I think I've already read this. So, the date's name was Wendy. Our meeting was fun. There were things to do. It was Friday night. The show was Saturday night, crowded but successful. By this time, we knew each other and wanted to see more of each other. When I got back to my roommates in Vermont, they were all questions. As soon as we could arrange another date, we did so. We both graduated at the same time. Wendy one day at Skidmore, and I was the next day at University of Vermont. All summer, I worked at the mink farm. Wendy worked in New York City at George Jensen's and lived at home at Maplewood, New Jersey. Our wedding was held at the Lutheran Church in Maplewood, New Jersey on September 29th, Uncle Sam finally caught up with me. I should have left a space there. Uncle Sam finally caught up with me. I was sworn into the Army at Boston Army Base and put on an all-night train headed to Fort Dix in New Jersey. I was in basic training for a couple months. Wendy was both at home but working in New York. We met each other one day before I was shipped out to Dothan, Alabama, at Fort Rucker for advanced training in fixed-wing airplanes. After this, I was assigned permanently to Fort Rucker, so I rented a cottage, and Wendy joined me. The church we found in Dothan, had an old, once retired pastor. He soon had about 16 adults in a confirmation class. One person there looked familiar and was my instructor in my engine class. I've got 2 6s here. Near the end of my Army service, I was declared a hardship case. A hardship case is Red Cross calling and looking into things whether you can get out early or not. But I was a hardship case and was released a month early in order to help pelting on the mink farm. Wendy and I were on the way home with our dog Schnitzel. We settled into our own farmhouse. My son Dirk was soon born there. It was almost that he was going to be born in the South, but because of our early release, he came back home. A Lutheran get-together took place along the North Shore of Massachusetts. It was a group from Augusta, Maine, that included John and Dot Nyhoff. Wendy joined this group just for that day and was busy singing and explaining that we were planning to move to the Newcastle, Maine area as soon as possible. A Ryder tractor-trailer rental made 6 trips to our new home. I got to know the lady at the toll booth. After about the second trip. But I'm thinking about the one over there. And she knew I was coming on about the second trip. From Wendy's information, we were able to move and join the church right from the start.
Well, I just learned something about my parents.
For the next part of the presentation, Linda Mueller and Pastor Carolyn have created a song. They actually created it for the 25th anniversary, and I understand it has updates, which I can't wait to see. And it's
I wasn't involved in writing the updates.
yeah, it'll be the basis for looking at the 40 years of history here. And we ask that you join the singers. I'm sure everyone here looks old enough to recognize this song. It's, we're trying to figure it out. I think it's slightly older than the church by 5 or 6 years, as most of us are. Yes, it's the YMCA song. And so let's begin the journey of faith for the people of Water Life Lutheran Church.
Oh, we do the first part? Okay. Is it up there? Wait for the words.
Oh, ready? We're ready for the words, okay.
Wanted, any Lutherans out there, I say wanted. You must be out there somewhere, I say wanted. You'll be an answer to prayer, come on, let's all start a new church. Next step is to find a good place to hold worship and to celebrate grace. We will go there with a smile on our face. Let's see where the Lord will lead us. That's how we started at the YMCA. It all started at the YMCA. Come on, people. The faithful set up the chairs, a lot of labor they shared. The good service every Sunday.
The beginnings. So the first service was held there at that YMCA in Booth Bay Harbor, which has been since totally remodeled. September 12th, 1982. So we're not far from that date, just 40 years. Bruce Meyer was the pastor of Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Augusta, but it was Bill Nave who came and was the assistant here who did most of the preaching. He was a lay person and led the worship each week. And Joanne Trowbridge was the education director. She called me not too long ago, and so I got to renew acquaintances with her a little bit. And anyway, I came across the first bulletin, and the acolyte was Michael Trowbridge, her son, and the ushers were David Wheelock, who is now in, where's Donnie?
It's in the Veterans Home in Augusta.
In the Veterans Home in Augusta, and Dr. Barry Fawcett, who was instrumental in getting Trish to Maine. He has passed away. And the coffee hosts were Ralph and Jerry Porras. Now, Ralph and Jerry Porras lived here. They were some of the ones that were really pushing to get a Lutheran worship experience here. And I can't swear to this, but I'm pretty sure, with everyone I've talked to, that Jerry Porras is the one who drew our symbol. So I want to talk just a minute about the symbol. It's obvious why that's our symbol, but the cross was the mast and yardum and became the basis for the Water of Life symbol. And of course, that's the most familiar symbol of Christianity, the cross. The ship also represents the church. From the earliest of times, a ship was a symbol for the church. And the three lines, no surprise, of the waves represented God as he has revealed himself to us as the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And having gone to the YMCA and worshiping several times myself as a member of Prince of Peace, I do remember you had to get there an hour early and set it all up because it was a YMCA room. So did anybody here worship at the YMCA? Okay, the Gatoses did. And you did
I
once?
did once. I did once.
Oh, I didn't know who that's. Yeah, okay. So some of us have experienced it. Okay, so those are the beginnings. Linda, we're on.
We moved to Denver, Scotland to sing to St. Andrews. It's the place we should be. We have built it through the word and to lead. Now let's see who comes to listen. We have children needing to learn. Let's hold classes for the Bible we yearn as we study. To the Lord we will turn to see where he leads this mission. You know it started at the YMCA. It all started at the YMCA. But it was time to move on. The days of Booth, they were gone. Now St. Andrews was our new home.
That sounds funny.
Bill, you're on.
Yeah, I remember St. Andrews very well. Do I need a...
Yes.
I need to.
I was pastoring a church in Connecticut, and I had a sabbatical, 5-month sabbatical. And we had always lived in parsonages, which are great. It's convenient to the church, but, you know, it's kind of rootless. You don't have a real home. It's like a rent, and you never can go back to it. And we wanted someplace we could call our home. And even though we were originally from Connecticut, we always wanted to be Mainers. We really wanted to be Mainers because we were up here on our honeymoon. It was just a very big part of us. Plus, we could afford it. And we bought a piece of property only a mile from the church on the Sheepscoot Road. And with that sabbatical, I decided we were going to build a house here. This would be our home. And it would be a place our children can always come back to. So I had the property, but I couldn't get into it. The front of it was swampy, and it was a wet spring. So I had to walk into where we were going to build a house, about 800 feet. I set up my tent, and I lived in the woods clearing. And come Sunday, I'm a strong believer that there are no lone wolf Christians. You've got to be part of a church. So I was looking for a church that we could call our main church home. And I went to all the main churches in town, the principal churches in town, and never felt at home. And then I got a copy of the Lincoln County News, and there was an advertisement for Water of Life. And I said, gee, that sounds like something that would be good. And I went to St. Andrews, beautiful church. Bill Nave was the preacher, good word. And I was in a free church situation, a congregational church, and I appreciate liturgy. So I enjoyed the liturgy of the Lutheran Church here. And this became a second home for us. We went to the YMCA. I think we were using it both places at one time, and we only went down there once. But we had good memories of St. Andrews, and then good memories of the Miles Hospital.
Okay, hold off on Miles.
Hold off on Miles? Okay, we're going to stay at St. Andrews.
Miles is the next line.
Okay. But that's how we wound up here. I was impressed also that many people from Prince of Peace in Augusta were in a sense like missionaries down here, so that people who came in off the street had a Lutheran congregation worshiping, and it gave them a feel of what it would be like to build the church here. And that was something that really impressed me. And it's been our church home since 1983. It's been special.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the services were at 3 in the afternoon.
3 o'clock, yeah.
So as not to conflict, and that ended up being a problem because a lot of people didn't want to worship, especially on a Sunday at 3 in the afternoon. So, okay.
Ready?
Moving on.
We need a pastor to call our own and a new place that will serve as our home. Pastor Gilbert came to turn every stone, and his presence helped us growing, made us move out once more, and at Miles again we opened our doors. And so what now does the Lord have in store for his people on the mid-coast? You know it started at the YMCA. It all started at the YMCA. At last we sang and we prayed, but just how long did we stay? We knew soon we would be searching.
There's Miles Hospital. You're on again, Bill.
Yeah, at Miles, we had a beautiful room. There was a conference room that overlooked the river, and it was a great place for worship. But I understand that the problem was Miles wouldn't let us put a sign out on the street saying Lutheran worship at this place. And that was a hindrance for growing a new church. And Dan Gilbert came and did some searching around. I think, help me, Carolyn, the next stop was the Masonic Lodge?
We're
Yeah.
going to do that next verse.
That's the next,
Next, yeah, I'm not getting into that one because
because I'll stop you.
I don't have great memories there. All right.
Now I'm intrigued.
Move on.
The next stop is the Masonic Hall. There are swords and knives on the wall. A new pastor we now need to call. So Pastor Luther's here to serve us. At this hall we finally have enough space, but it's the people who create a warm place for the family of God to embrace. Where do we go from here, Lord? You know it started at the YMCA. It all started at the YMCA. This time we knew it was wrong. We knew we did not belong. We had to find a place of our own.
So this is actually the only place that I never got to worship at Water of Life. And I was really hoping that Wendy could come and talk about it, but her brother got taken to the hospital and she wasn't able to be with us. But one thing I think I know is that the first confirmation class was the one that Sally Farrell and Sonny Erickson, Margie Erickson's granddaughter, were confirmed by Pastor Gilbert. You can see them. That's the Masonic Hall at the top. And my funny story, even though I was never there, is that when I did start coming on a regular basis here, as is often the case, oh, school teacher, let's get her to teach Sunday school. So they grabbed me for Sunday school starting in the fall, and I think Nancy Parker can probably relate to this. And I had Chris Keller and the two DeBella girls, and nobody told me anything about them ahead of time. But it was okay, because I like funky kids. But honestly, it took me at least 6 weeks to get them to be quiet about the swords and the knives at the last place where they were. They just thought that was the greatest. And, but like I said, I never saw it. I couldn't find any pictures. None of you brought me any pictures. Nancy, what do you got?
Somebody said that you had to go in and clean up the ashtrays and the beer bottle.
We got a lot of liquor in our history.
So that wasn't somebody told me that.
Okay.
It's the first place that I started reading, and I asked Pastor Lugo what one had to do to read, whether I had to go through a special program. That's the first place where I started being a reader. And, you know, I asked Pastor Lugo, so what do I have to do to be able to read on Sundays? Because I thought maybe I had to go through a course. And he said, well, all you need to be able to do is to be able to read. So I did, and I loved it. And there's just one other story. It's also an argument, a time where I had an argument, the only time with a, no, it's not quite true. But my first argument with a minister, because Pastor Lugo would always say, forgiveness of sins for some. He would never say for all. So I said to him, so what about the rest of the people? You know, I said, I think we all are in need of forgiveness of sins if we really, truly repent. He said, well, no, that's the way I do it, and that's the way it's going to stay.
You do notice that I worked this around the places, not the pastors. Because we'd have way too many stories if we did it the other way.
Now I'm really interested. We're skipping the good stuff.
Yes. And you guys have been around forever too, right?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. When we first came in this morning, okay. When we first came in this morning, there was a young lady sitting in front of us, and you were introducing the new people or people that first showed up, and that woman says, well, you should stand up too. You know, you're new people. I said, no, I think we've been around for a while. Our first encounter was at the Masonic home. And unfortunately, I didn't focus on Pastor Luger. I focused on the organist, because her name was Dottie Day. And for some reason, Day just struck a note with me, of course. So we went up afterwards, and Joyce and I live in Woodstock, Connecticut, just over the line from Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, there was a fellow named Odlin Day. And just out of curiosity, I went over to Dottie and asked if she knew the Day family down. She said, that's my in-laws. My husband is Odlin Day's son. And so we have very, very good memories. I never looked at the swords or the knives or anything else. My focus was on the organ and, of course, this church. And this church has been very, very good to us, and Carolyn especially.
Okay, let's move on. All right. You mean us? Okay.
A new church would really be neat, yes, our own church, to make our worship complete. Homestead Restaurant would be a great place to meet, and Red Ghost Health, that's what happened. Members is what our church really needs to be chartered. From the synod be freed, yes, we'll do it. Go wherever God leads, no longer on that mission status. You know it started at the YMCA. It all started at the YMCA. YMCA. Now Pastor Luger retired, and Mike and Captain inspired, and we kept the fire burning.
God bless them, they're both home with Jesus. So, at the beginning of ministry here, of course, this wasn't here, and Bill will talk about that later, but it was truly a bar, and I loved that. And so here's a picture that went into the newspaper, and you can see dear Dorothea's in the picture, and Jim Poole's in the picture, Pastor Luger, and other people. And this was the sign that was apparently down there when it had changeable letters. And this is when we went to the synod to be accepted as our own entity, our own congregation. And my funny story about that is that they were trying to figure out who was going to go down and represent Water of Life. I think I had been here all of 2 years, and they're like, Carolyn, will you go down and talk? And I said, why should I talk? I'm new. Why shouldn't somebody else go down and talk? Well, they didn't let go of it. So I went down. That's my husband, Jack, carrying the banner. Can you all see the banner? Yeah. Uh-huh. And I could talk for a long time on the banner because of Water of Life and Bread of Life, for those of you who know me. But it had nothing to do with that. Somebody from the synod had made the banner, not us. And there was another church that was taken in at the same time, and the program is hanging up out there somewhere. And so if you want to read what they wrote about us back then. And another interesting thing is as I read history, including what I wrote for this place, there's a few conflicting things. But I have a picture at home of myself on the big screen talking on behalf of Water of Life. So I guess I'm just, kind of, I don't know. I've been around too long, maybe. But anyway, so it really, I have to say this about Pastor Luger. He got us this building. He made some kind of deal with the synod. And it involved him having to retire so that the retirement paid his salary instead of the synod. I can't really remember how it went, but he made some kind of a deal. If I retire, but I'll still be the pastor here, but the church will pay me, because apparently the synod was paying his salary at that time. So we have him to thank for getting this building. And I wish I could say more about it, but I can't remember the story too well. I know he told me several times, but anyway, so we got a home of our own, and Gwen told you about having Sunday school in the beer cooler. And yeah, we've been really blessed, and Bill's going to talk about that more later. Let's go on to the next verse.
Looking for a shepherd to face the great challenge of working hard in this place, Pastor Reedy renewed the story of grace. A new chapter had begun. After he left, we received Pastor Fred to keep order, and the service he led, and the Russells with the word kept us fed while we searched for a new pastor. You know it started at the YMCA. It all started at the YMCA. A new couple in town started coming around, and pretty soon the homes were with us.
Bill, you are on. This was his baby.
before I cover what I'm supposed to, everybody else made some personal comments, which I was going to refrain from, but I can't hold them any longer, so I'm not going to start with high school, but we'll skip over that. We joined the church in 1998. Pastor Luger was here. Most of the bar things were intact, including the dance floor, which was basically the main aisle going up to where we had an altar table set, and Pastor Luger, of course, was here. So we had moved here from Chicago, and I was a lifelong Lutheran, and my wife had a lesser time Lutheran. She had been Episcopal before Presbyterian, sorry. I knew it was one of those cult places, you know. Anyway, so we were going to look around. We looked up, and I think we found 3 Lutheran churches that we thought were in driving distance. And so we came here first because it was the closest. Came in and we listened to the service. We thought it was pretty good. But, you know, we wanted to check everything else before we joined. We really didn't know much about it. So we went home, and Monday morning, I think it was about 7:30 in the morning, there was a knock at our door. Now, we live in a log home on an island on the other side of Boothbay. It's not all that easy to find or get to it. But Pastor Luger was at the door. And I think about 3 hours later, I mean, he wasn't leaving until we signed up. So we signed up. And we never did check out any of the other places. No, there was no, I still don't even know how he found us, but anyway. I remember also when one of the Synod staff was here talking to us about something. I think it was when we were in the process of trying to make a call, and we're talking about Pastor Luger, and he thought that Pastor Luger made St. Paul look like a slacker. And Pastor Luger used to, if there was forecast snow, he slept here on the floor and got up at sunrise and shoveled everything out there that you could. This is at his age. And I mean, and you'd better, if he did that, you better show up. You don't tell him that there was snow anyway, but yeah, that is not something that most of the pastors I know would have done. That's not a counter. But anyway, so we were here, and the way it was working, we had that one pretty large room, pretty much the way it is, and that was, of course, the sanctuary. And the other room there were like 2 or 3 kind of odd-shaped rooms, right, that went with the bar. We used one as an office, I think, but there are really very few Sunday school places that were really suitable, or to have a meeting or anything else. It was really just the sanctuary and that. So it was in February, I looked up the February of 2002, that we formed a long-range planning committee, which I was on. And so we put together a list, and we had of what we wanted to do. And the must-haves, number 1 was Sunday school rooms. I mean, we are an older congregation, but we always loved the kids, just like with the service today. I mean, that's a tough act to beat when those kids are up there with their energy, and it's just what churches are supposed to have in them. And we needed a meeting room and a storage area and other kinds of things. We needed a pastor's office and study. We needed improved worship area. We wanted to have at least 50 chairs because we could not have 50 chairs in the other room. And an improved entrance with an airlock so that the cold didn't just come in when we opened it in the winter, and so on. So those were the things we started to look for. And as you can imagine, in a church, we weren't that large, but we were large enough to have plenty of diverse ideas about what the right way to go about that was. And everybody agreed that the number 1 priority was Sunday school rooms. But there were some of us that thought, well, the way to do that is to build what we really needed for a worship area and then use the other existing area for Sunday school rooms. As opposed to, if we build Sunday school rooms, we still don't have a suitable worship area. We would need to do something else later in time to do that. But it was very, I mean, it wasn't mean, but it was very contentious. and there was no agreement. And the thing I won't forget, and I apologize to Cliff because I've told this numerous, he left, did he? Did he leave? Okay. Oh, no, there he is, okay. Because I've told this story so many times, because it really impressed me. We were in a congregational meeting like this, and we were trying to come to some resolution of which, and I mean, you know, half of the room was one thing, and half the room was the other. And Cliff finally stood up and he said, I don't think we're ever going to get there. I think we just need to stop and pray about it and let God take us there. And everybody just went silent. We did exactly that. And I don't think it was 15 minutes later that the decision had been made what we were going to do. And I mean, that to me is a really strong sign of how special this church is, that we can put aside all of our individual things. And somebody in here is always smart enough to say, hey, wait a second, let's get God involved in this. You know, we're all really smart and all the rest, but let's let somebody else handle it. And it worked then, and it continues to work, I think, for this church. So we did get together. We got a local contractor. We came. We designed this. We had an architect, and we designed this room to be very functional and nothing fancy at all. And it turned out that, you know, in the middle of the window design, one of our members here came up with the idea we were going to just have the round window of making that a cross in the center, which it did. But basically we did it. Another big argument was about whether we would put a steeple on this, because there were people who said that's extravagant. You know, we don't waste the church's money to put a steeple up. It doesn't add anything to the worship. Well, after a lot of argument, it turned out that the fiberglass steeple we have up there cost about $500 out of a $300 and some thousand dollar project. So really, we could go ahead and probably put that on, and God wouldn't mind. But anyway, we did that, and then the next step then was we were left with just that big room in there. And we had put together a mortgage, and it was a pretty good-sized mortgage for us at the time. Even though it was not that expensive a building. And so we decided to do the renovation of the other room in there and build all the offices and other things just ourselves, which we did. And we did it as cheap as we could. The drop ceiling, still the same one that was in the old building. We just repaired it where there had been wall partitions and put up the other walls. We used the same heating system, everything else, and made it work. But I think the things we did, I think, were smart and not expensive, and they have really served us well, because we've had enough seats, we've had a good acoustics in this church for the music that we have, which is really important to us. And anyway, so that's my memory.
Could you just say something about the mortgage meltdown and where we are with that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. We had a number of gifts and things early on, but we basically paid off the mortgage. And when we got down to, I'm not sure where we were, maybe 100,000, 80. Anyway, we were well paid in, and we were starting to pay heavily onto the principal of it. And we decided to just put on a little campaign. We called it Mortgage Meltdown. And the idea was, you know, for every dollar that we could pay off early on the principal, you know, you're going to save a couple years of interest, because we were still 3 or 4 years away from paying it off. And so we did that, and we had a really, really good success. And all we did is ask people, hey, if at the end of a month, if, you know, there's no pledge, there's nothing, if you have enough, you could make an extra week's payment, or if you have an extra $50, $100, whatever, please put it in. And Ed, do you know where we are now with?
I'd have to make a guess. I think since we started, we're probably in the neighborhood of $17,000, $18,000.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But the other thing that we did that's really helping is the highest payment we were making when I first started, $10.35 a month was our mortgage payment. It got reduced. Council said, "Oh, let's keep it there."
Yeah.
So we're still paying $10.35 a month when the principal was probably close to $60.
Yeah.
The interest rate is
Yeah.
now like $60. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's become a long.
So we are, I mean,
It's about $28,000 now.
I mean, effectively, we are debt-free because we actually have more liquid assets in the bank than our mortgage or any other debt we have. So we've been very fortunate. Thanks.
I was actually thinking about, for our 40th anniversary, let's pay off the mortgage. But Don's brow beat me, let's have a garden.
I didn't mean one to replace the other. And it was Linda's idea. Let's not blame me.
You know I blame everything on you.
Hey, Carolyn, we will still accept your check for the remainder of the mortgage.
Oh, okay, thanks. Moving on.
Now we had lots of God's work to do, preaching, teaching, led by our pastor Hugh with noisy offerings. Outreach really grew, the inspiration kept on flowing. Who knew Pastor Hugh would retire and that Carolyn would be the next we would hire? God prepared her to be the one to inspire, if only she could be ordained. It all started at the YMCA. It all started at the YMCA. For her life is in prayer, and for the people we care, and the story we will share.
Oh, is it being weird? Do we ever expect anything else? So, you experienced today our noisy offerings, and I have to give Pastor Hugh credit for that, because he's the one that first brought that from some other church where he had been, and he initiated that here at Water of Life, and we've kind of taken it to a new level, and Mission and Outreach is responsible for choosing an organization that will benefit each month like Chip did for today. This was a young man in the community, not from Water of Life, who started something called Food for Thought at the local GSB elementary school. And so I invited him to come here and talk to us. And we had one of the biggest noisy offerings we ever had. We helped him get his project off the ground. I love it when kids initiate things. So that's what my memory of Pastor Hugh is.
Peg's cousin was here one time from Long Island. She thought that was so great, she started it in her church. In Long Island Methodist Church.
Cool. Cool. And I am going to be talking in a few minutes about a little bit about mission and outreach, but I want to say it now because I tend to forget things. If you look at the flags that are up here, and they're new, and they'll be up on the wall for a while, those are all the ministries that Water of Life have supports. And the white ones are, what are they? The blue ones are local. I think the red ones are ELCA, and the white ones are, yeah. And the red ones are United States. So, anyway, that's very cool. And I apologize, I forgot to get somebody to bring the display in. But if you look out there, there's a display, Mission and Outreach display, which I wanted to be out there where people were eating, and I was going to bring it in here. So I don't know.
And who made those flags?
That would be Sheila, who I guess took, oh no, where is Sheila?
She's probably washing dishes.
Oh, she's washing dishes, of course.
She is Sheila.
She is Sheila. You know, sometimes the Lord just brings you special people, and last fall he brought us Sheila and Gary, and I haven't stopped thanking him yet. All right, let's move on. We're almost there.
One more.
Last verse.
she did it. Carolyn persevered from her goal. She never feared, she's been our pastor for over 8 years, always bringing God's word to us. Look out, she always has new ideas. She may call you to share the vision she sees. Don't say no. You're the one pastor needs. Good Lord, we don't know where God leads us. It all started at the YMCA. It all started at the YMCA. Now we no longer roam. This is our home, sweet home, where we praise and love and serve Him at Water of Life.
So one of the really special, for me anyway, services we had here, I believe our only ordination was my ordination in 1984, and there's a familiar face with me, Bishop Hazelwood. Did I say 84? I meant 2014.
I was going to say, I wasn't even ordained in 1980.
You only missed it by 30 years.
Okay.
We got the idea.
And I always say I love it. I love to be near him because he's so tall. He makes you feel like you're small. You know what I mean? And that feels really good when you're kind of, wait a minute, so there you go. Okay, move on. As Bill alluded to, music and worship, I would guess, is number one in this congregation. It's the most important thing to us. Correct me if I'm wrong, but not now, later. Somebody mentioned Dottie Day. Yeah. And I could not find a picture of her to put in this, but I had it in my notes to be sure to say that Dottie Day was our first full-time musician. And following her was Julie Anderson, and then our Lois Omland, and Gretchen Faylau, who played the flute today, played the flute. There's William, who we try to get to play the piano more because we just absolutely love his playing, but it's like pulling teeth to get him to play. And then came Kathy and Holly Patterson, the oboist, who, it's my fault she wasn't here today because I gave her the wrong date. And then, of course, Linda on the guitar for the last 25 years, and sometimes with the children. Okay, trying to go fast now.
Oh, you are, okay.
And we'd be nothing without the children, and so I apologize because I'm going to be a grandmother right now, because I didn't realize this till I looked at these this morning. So the young man who read the scriptures today with the blonde hair, that's not his real color. But it's better than green. Okay. This is him. He was an angel in the pageant. This is him as a shepherd in the pageant. This is him at Bible school. He's getting a little older. This is him 3 years ago as David, Goliath. AJ was David and Goliath. Yeah. So some of our children have been around for a really long time, and others we've seen come and go, like the Thielanders and the Farrells, and Bible school stuff. Next one. Kids number 2. Part 2. Camp Calumet. This was 2 confirmation classes ago. And this is one of our larger Bible schools. And is Jim still here? Pool? Yeah. So, back 20 years ago, Jim made us a puppet theater, which we've used a lot. We've brought it in here, and the kids have done shows for the congregation, and we've used it in Sunday school and Bible school. And anyway, okay. So we love our children, in case you didn't notice that. And another important thing is mission and outreach. And these happen to be the pictures that we could find, but there's many, many of them that we could, I mean, we could have pages and pages of that. Yes, we're going to keep working on this, so it'll be ready for the 50th. Jim Waterman and the Shoebox Project, Nancy Parker with the Backpack Project, and on it goes. So, anyway, I think that's it, isn't it? Nope, it's not. One more slide. Are you ready? Yes. God is good all the time.
All the time, God is good.
Now you know more than you wanted to know about Somas. Bill, you're on. I'm on? Yeah, you were going to ask somebody to speak.
Oh, yes.
We wanted to have one more story, life story from somebody. And I think he has a good long one, but we would certainly like our bishop to come up and say a few words to us.
Well, when I was 5, no, when I heard this, I said, well, I kind of said everything that I wanted to say, in my homily. But this is, I really enjoyed this, sitting here, hearing the history, the stories. There's clearly a lot of stories that I really want to hear. So I think I got to come back, and we got to hang out at a restaurant for a couple hours, and everybody's got to come around and tell those stories about it. Yeah, exactly. There you go. No, so this was great. Thank you so much for your ministry that you do in this community and all around, as evidenced by the flags. And you're blessed by a good pastor, and a good pastor is blessed by a good congregation. So go in peace, serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. God bless. Be well.